Hey there, how is it going everybody? In this video, we will be learning about how to work with textual data in Python, that is, the string data type. And currently, we have hello world on our screen, and if we were to go ahead and run this, it just prints out hello world. Now, if we wanted to create a variable that holds the text value, then we could create a new variable as message here. Now, coming from another language, you might be wondering if we need semicolons, but Python operates purely on white spaces, and that makes Python a very clean language to work with. By convention, variable names in Python are usually all lowercase, and if we have multiple words, then they are separated by an underscore. So if this message here was instead my message, the variable name would be my underscore message. Now these variable names should also be as descriptive as possible. So if I was to instead call this message as M, it would still be a valid variable name, but now anyone reading this code wouldn't know what the M stands for. Now, instead of printing out hello world, we can directly print out this message here, and that would give us the same results. So if I run this, then you can see it down here, we still get the same results. You can see that I created this string with single quotes. Now you can also use double quotes and even triple quotes. And if you are wondering whether there is a difference between single quotes and double quotes, it really just depends on what text you have inside your string. So for example, if you have a single quote in your string and instead of hello world we make it AI's world. Now the problem here is that Python thinks that the single quote after AI is the end of the string, and it's not going to know what to do with the part after the quotes. And if you run this now, you would get a syntax error. Now there are a couple of different ways to handle this. We could escape this single quote with a backslash, and now if I run this, Python knows that this quote doesn't close out the string and instead this one does. Now another way to handle that is to instead use double quotes on the outside of our string. So if we know that our string contains single quotes, then we can instead use double quotes on the outside. And this goes both ways. So if we know that our string contains double quotes, then I would use single quotes on the outside. And let's say we wanted to print multi-line text, then we can use triple quotes. So for example, let's print out AI will take over the world, and then let's go to the next line and type and that day will never come. Now if I was to print this, we can see that our text was correctly printed out over multiple lines. So let's go back to our simple hello world example. So I'm just going to take away all of that and replace it with our message variable, and now we are back to our starting point. We can think of our string as a string of individual characters, and we can also access the individual characters. First, let's see how to find out the number of characters in our string, and to do that we can use the len function, which stands for length. Now instead of printing out the string, we can print out the length of our string, and we can see that it prints out 11. And we can also access our string characters individually, and to do that we can use the square bracket notation and pass in the location of the character that we want to print. So I will say message and then square brackets. Now the location that we pass in here is known as an index, and it starts out at 0. So to access the first character of our string, we can say print the message and then access the index of 0. So if we print that, then we can see that we got the capital H. Since the length of our string is 11, it means that with the first character starting out at 0, the last character would be at index 10. So it's our total length minus 1. And if I was to print out the value at index 10, then we can see we get the D character, which is the last character in the string. Now, if you accidentally try to access an index that doesn't exist, then you can see we get an index error. So if we were to access the index of 11, we can see that we get an error. Now, we can also access a range of characters. So if I were to say that I wanted to print the word hello from our string, then we could simply access the index from 0:5. So the first index here is our starting point and the 5 here is our stopping point. Now, one thing to note here is that the start index is inclusive but the end index is exclusive, which means that we want characters starting from 0 up to 5 but not including 5. And now let's go ahead and run this. So we can see that it prints out hello. Now since our starting point here is just the first index, we can actually drop off that first index of 0 and it will assume that we want to start at the very beginning. And if we don't put anything here and :5, we should get the same output. So if we run that, we can see that we still got hello as the output. Now if instead of hello I wanted to grab the word world from our string, then we can start at the 6th index and we can just go to the end. And just like we left off the starting index and it started at the very beginning, leaving off the end index goes all the way up to the very end. So now if we run that, we can see that it gives us back the word world. So what we are doing here is called slicing, and we will be covering this in greater detail later on, but that was just a quick introduction. So that's all for this particular video, guys. If you have any feedback or queries, feel free to drop them in the comment section below, and I will see you all next time.